Hi, welcome to another video from Trinitron TV. Devanshya. India as a nation woke up during the American-Soviet Cold War, and even though the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru had his fair share of strategic blunders, one policy which worked for India strategically was the non-alignment policy. India's effort to remain autonomous proved successful, and it survived the Cold War relatively harmless. After the breakup of Soviet Union, US became an unchallenged superpower, and the world order changed from a bipolar to a unipolar arrangement. Even then, India pursued its national objectives, carrying out nuclear tests in 1998. But after the advent of 2010s, the world order has changed a lot, and the world is no longer unipolar but multipolar. With different regional powers rising to take the throne, India has also seen two major geopolitical shifts. First is the rise of US-China conflict, which has now exploded to a full-blown competition. And the second is India being looked by the US as the balancing power against the rise of China. US has willingly tried to strengthen the diplomatic and military relations with India, and China has observed this with great suspicion. As the US-China rivalry escalates, India is being expected to maintain a balance and avoid getting drawn into this rivalry. But unfortunately, maintaining India's autonomy is going to become more and more difficult because of India's geography. During the Cold War, India had the luxury of physical distance from America and the Soviet Union. But this time around, India shares a disputed border with an aspiring global power. And in geopolitics, a country's geographic location is the determinant of its actions, and hence we're seeing rising tensions between India and China along this border, with both nations deploying missiles and military infrastructure. China's dominance in Asia is a must for its world domination aspiration, and as the military might of China grows, it will force its neighbors to settle the border dispute in China's favor, and this would lead to further escalation of tensions between India and China. Another point of conflict would be the Indian Ocean. The Chinese Navy very well knows about the strategic importance of Malacca Strait, which Indian Navy can choke to cut off the supply of goods to China in a warlike situation. The US Navy would also be present in the Indian Ocean, owing to its interests in the Middle East, and this amalgamation of three navies would make the situation complex. So now that we've established that India has to leave its non-alignment policy behind and find a new strategy to deal with the new world, let's try to analyze how India can deal with China in the upcoming years. One straightforward answer would be to become powerful both economically and militarily so that no nation can influence India's decisions. But that would take decades to become a reality, and in the meantime, India would lose a lot strategically. A much more effective and long-term strategy, which I call the push and pull strategy, can be used by India to achieve its objectives while minimizing the risk. For explaining this strategy, let's divide different nations into different levels according to their ability to project both hard and soft power. In this list, we can keep countries like Russia, US and China in a higher level than India because of their military and diplomatic might, while the countries in South Asian region and Middle East can be kept at a lower level. Now, we would devise a set of policies which we would follow while dealing with a country which is on a lower level or a higher level than India. Let's learn with an example of China, which has very effectively used its soft power and hard power against countries both above and below itself on the table. Whenever the Chinese president visits India for diplomatic reasons, the Chinese army intrudes into the Indian territory. Here comes the push and pull. China pulls by having diplomatic relations to solve border disputes with India, while it pushes India by intruding into the Indian territory during such visits, basically normalizing the intrusion of Indian territory by the Chinese army. Now let's see how China deals with US which is on a higher level in both soft power and hard power. First, they aligned themselves with American needs so that America can't totally sideline China whenever it wants to. Take trade for example. No matter how much Trump wanted to level the trade deficit with China, it couldn't have happened unilaterally in America's favor. Hence, he was trying to strike a deal with China. After aligning themselves with America's interest, China started taking hold of big institutions like United Nations and WHO under their own influence to get what they need. Such efficient use of a country's diplomatic and military prowess to make use of all the leverages available to it so that it gains strategic advantage is the textbook definition of push and pull strategy. China also extended its influence to other countries through this strategy, and especially in the countries neighboring India. But what's commendable is that India has effectively countered these Chinese advances through their own push and pull, albeit in a more discreet manner. Back in 2013, Maldives got a new president in Abdullah Yameen, and what was considered as a backyard country of India turned hostile towards them. As it turned out, that Abdullah was being supported by the Chinese. Abdullah gave numerous projects to the Chinese companies and took billions of loans from China. But India, although a little late, took action, and the new government of Maldives is much friendlier to India. India dealt especially well with Malaysia after the controversial statements of Mahathir Mohamad on Kashmir. First, India used its market as a leverage and banned imports of processed palm oil, of which Malaysia is the biggest exporter. This was a big blow for them since India is the biggest consumer of palm oil in the world. Since then, Mahathir has been ousted of the opposition party of Malaysia, and Malaysia has got a new president. All these decisions indicate that India has already started to use the push and pull as a strategy to get results. But it still hasn't adopted it as a fully fledged policy, and the biggest example of this is the Indian Ocean. For India, one of the most effective ways to create leverage for future hedging against regional and global players is to accept its role as a net security provider or a guardian of Indian Ocean, specifically against China. The resultant heft generated from this will create multi-directional possibilities for using the push and pull as a strategy to create alignments like US-India, Japan-India, and Australia-Japan-India-US, or the Quad. But India is yet to finally abandon the burden of its non-alignment policy so that it can align itself with groups beneficial for it. In conclusion, India is at one of its most difficult strategic crossroads right now, and getting out of it will be a Herculean task for the Modi government, and it will all boil down to how India performs on its predetermined objectives while minimizing the risks that come along with them.